Hello, my name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and I am a vegan confidence coach. I specialize in helping vegans eliminate people pleasing so they can confidently be themselves and navigate the challenges of having a lifestyle different from the people around them. Here on my channel, The Confident Vegan, I share content on Tuesdays for Topic Tuesday, where I interview guests and share the other personal development topics. On Fridays, I have Food Friday, where I share recipes and other food-related content. Today, my special guest is Kevin Newell, who is the owner and founder of the multi-award-winning Humane Wildlife Solutions. They are Europe's only non-lethal, vegan, ethical, environmentally friendly alternative to pest control. They not only help people and businesses, but have helped governments decide on law and policy changes. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, thank you, Jennifer, and hello everyone who's tuned in to watch. Thank you so much for asking me to come on your exciting channel. I'm really excited about this.
I'm really excited to have this conversation because I feel like it's going to shed a lot of light on understanding, so-called pests, and just have I hope we'll have, but at the end of the interview, people have a deeper understanding about wildlife and the pests that, could bother them in their home and businesses. And so, yeah. So first thing I ask all my guests is, what is your vegan story?
My vegan story. Wow. Well, I've been vegan just over 26 years now. So I went vegan when it wasn't as popular as it was now, and it was really, really tough back then. As a teenager, I was quite different to my friends. They wanted to go to house parties and try and hook up with girls, and I had that drive, but that wasn't my main focus in my life. I wanted to go out and find animals and look for wild rats or snakes or spiders, and I was just totally enthralled and inspired by nature, and that was my main driver. So while they were having their parties, I was out looking for all sorts of creatures. This led me to end up volunteering at an animal sanctuary in Essex in England, where I grew up. And when I was at this sanctuary, we had these Chinese potbelly pigs come in. And anyone know Chinese potbelly pig? They're quite short and they're very tubby, but they're insanely cute and very, very intelligent. Now, you got to remember, this time I wasn't even a vegetarian at this point. I hadn't made the link between my love for animals and me eating animals. So this story is a very big jump forward for me. Well, so these potbelly pigs come to the sanctuary, and it was my job there to settle them in, make them feel comfortable and happy, because pigs are extremely intelligent creatures. So they needed a lot of confidence to be gained from my side and on their side, because the plan was once they were settled in, we'd let them out and they could walk around the sanctuary and they could be amongst people, so people could go there and spend time with these wonderful little creatures. Now, on the very first day, they got let out of their enclosure to go wander the park. Done it all, everything went well, and I went off to go and get my breakfast at the cafe, which was on site. And I ordered a sausage sandwich, and I went to sit down and eat my sandwich, and one of my pigs had followed me without me knowing. Wow. And squeezed into the tea room. And I was horrified. I made the link. I was about to eat a cousin, a relative of my little piggy that was just coming in and followed me. And I had to shoo him out the tea rooms, because obviously couldn't have pigs in the tea rooms, so naturally. But I stood up and I made a big statement to my colleagues and the staff. I was like, I'm going to go vegetarian. Can't eat my friends. And that was one of the things that I think was really powerful. Even saying that now, I can't eat my friends, and that pig was my friend, and then I came across a guy who was there, and he came in and said, well, you should go vegan, if you really care about the animals. And I was like, well, what's a vegan? And he proceeded to tell me about the dairy industry and the byproducts of the dairy industry. But what I mean, that is how male calves are killed, and the veal industry and all those offshoot of dairy. And that was, I think, the first indicator to me that there was something wrong. So he offered to take me to a dairy farm in Essex, in England. And honestly, my image was we were going to be going up a nice gravel drive in the beautiful English countryside with happy cows and paddocks either side of this drive. And that was what I thought we were going to go and see these happy cows and we could pet them and they all look well. But no, we he took me around the back of the farm and he cut open the fence and we went through this fence, which obviously you're not really allowed to do. And I'm glad he did this, and I'm glad we took that risk because we came up to a renter skip. So in the UK, you can get a big skip that comes off the back of the lorry and you put all your rubbish in, and it gets disposed of, and it's massive. You can fit a small car in some of these. So we approached this renter skip, and in it was one dead and one dying male calf, which died in front of our eyes in a pool of blood. And it shocked me. And that was such a shock to my system. Now, I was just a young teenager, so I was still really impressionable. And when you witness something traumatic, all your senses play a part in building those thoughts and those impressions in your mind. And it was the smell, the sound, the sight all together, and it was shocked me so much. And I think it did traumatize me when I first saw it, because it was just I just witnessed these one dead baby and another baby dying in front of me, and no one should have to ever witness that. No one should have to ever go through that. And from that day onwards, I declared I was going to go vegan, and it wasn't easy. It was really, really hard. And in a way, I'm kind of jealous these days, because these days people will go on Netflix or YouTube and see really amazing documentaries which really expose the horrors. Yet back when I went vegan, the only way my friend who took me to that farm could really expose me to it was really expose it to me in person, and it was
Yeah.
horrific. But it made me the person I am today, and I've helped so many animals just by being vegan, and also tens of thousands of animals just through my business being vegan too. So although it was really tough, Jennifer, I'm so glad that happened to me, and I'm so ever grateful to my friend who took me to that farm and exposed me to what was going on there. Because to be honest, a lot of people probably wouldn't believe it, but seeing is believing, I guess, when you come in a situation like that.
Thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, I have this conversation a lot about the disassociation that we have, because when we buy milk or meat or eggs, it's all in nice little packages at the grocery store, right?
Yeah,
And even though we know what meat is, we don't see the process of how it became in that package.
yeah,
And so it's easy for us to have that disassociation. I think, all of us who grew up in, meat eating households, that's the normal part of it. But then when you actually see it, and when you saw what you saw, it's understandable that, because no one wants to see that. No one,
exactly. Well,
yeah.
there's a
Uh,
common saying. I don't know if you have it in America, but we always say here in the UK, if abattoirs and slaughterhouses had glass walls, very few people would be eating meat, because they'd be exposed to exactly what's going on. And, if it was as transparent as it should be, there'd be so few people eating meat. And we know that the dairy and the meat industries are declining, and that's great, but they still need that little push, because millions of farmed animals still die every day needlessly. I've been vegan 26 years. I've not died yet. It's not been a phase. I've not withered away. I do a lot of running. I'm quite a good athlete, and I'm not doing anything overly going to, like, I don't go to the gym or anything. I do running maybe a couple of times a week. But you can be a vegan and be really, really healthy, and no one has to die for that life choice. And I don't understand why more people wouldn't want to live a guilt-free life of knowing that no one's died, for gluttony, I guess, for the pleasures of the stomach of eating food when you don't really need to do it anymore.
Yeah, yeah, and especially now, like when you became vegan, it was still not as much stuff out there as there is
Mm.
now. I think in the past, I've been vegan now for almost 7 years, and it took me a
Ooh,
couple years. Yay!
brilliant.
It took me a couple years to transition to that, because I noticed how dairy was making me feel. And so it started with me looking, and I also was concerned about health. My mother died from a heart attack at the time, like 7 years before then, or yeah, like seven years before then, roughly. And I really wanted to start taking care of my health and just eating better. and not feeling deprived in the process. I think that's something we people don't want to give up food because there's this fear of getting deprived. And so for me, it started, when my mom had a heart attack, and it started making me feel more mindful about the food I was eating. I wanted to start developing better eating habits. And then I noticed how dairy was making me feel, and I had suspicions that it was giving me skin issues and just sinus issues. And so I decided an experiment and take a break for 30 days from dairy. And I realized that dairy was making me feel bad in ways that I didn't even realize was making me feel bad until I gave it up. And I realized that that was like my normal operating system. And then when I started feeling better, and I was looking up all these dairy-free recipes, which a lot of vegan recipes came up. And I was like, wow, this food looks really exciting, more exciting than the stuff I make. Like all these creative uses of spices and fruits and veggies and desserts that tasted amazing, look amazing, but are using healthier ingredients. Yes, you can make a vegan dessert that's completely unhealthy if you want, but you can also, because you're using a lot of fruits and vegetables and nuts in a creative way, like tofu cheesecake, for example, is much better on your stomach and digestive system or a cashew cheesecake than a dairy cheesecake. And
Yep.
when I've been in New York City, I've met up with friends at restaurants, and we've had vegan desserts, and they love the cheesecake versus the real cheesecake because it was much lighter on the stomach. And so it all started with health stuff. And then I watched a documentary, and I knew about where meat came from, but I didn't there's that disassociation. And then, really thinking about it, and something in me really wanted to become vegan, but I was afraid of how people would judge me because I knew no one in my household would want to be vegan. And what would I do when I would go to social set situations and dealing with people's comments and judgment? And as a recovering people pleaser, that was like an area I still needed to work on. And then eventually my soul was just like screaming at me to just do it. And so I started taking bigger steps towards it. And so I tried it out, and I went to a family or a friend. I went to a Thanksgiving, a American holiday here. I went to someone's house, and I brought this lentil loaf and these chocolate cookies made out of black beans that were like fudgy and chewy,
Wow.
and everyone loved them. And yeah, I got comments and questions and moments I felt uncomfortable, but I survived. I realized people's judgment wasn't the end of the world. And so from there, it was, I was vegan for a couple months. Then I slipped back to being vegetarian by having some fish, and then I just couldn't eat anything that was living or had anything to do with it. And so, and that was what brought me to my mission, is creating a space to help vegans and aspiring vegans find a way for them to navigate the challenges of living a lifestyle different from the people around them. And, even though my household isn't completely vegan, it's mostly vegan because everyone likes the food I make, and there's only just a small amount of animal products that the non-vegans eat. And that's okay. There's still an impact, right? Our household has lessened that. And there's and and that's one of the things I want to focus on with people, is it's about progress, and it takes time, and it's a transition, and it is hard. And I would say the first 6 months it was hard for me when I fully committed, but I couldn't go back because I just could not consume anything that went through suffering. And then it trickled down into animal, clothing, no leather stuff, and things like that. And yeah, it's just so important to have this awareness. And thanks again for sharing your story. And it's sad that those two cows died, but it sounds like those cows inspired you on a mission that saved so many other animals. And I
Yeah.
feel like their death wasn't in vain, because at least by you seeing them and your friends showing you that, you've been now able to save so many lives because of that.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm forever grateful and show gratitude to that moment of my life, because that was a big change for my health and for the animals I've saved through my work.
Yeah, it sounds like really important work. And so my next question is, how can we be more understanding about wildlife and, so-called pests that we experience in our day to day?
I guess one of the things, and a lot of people who contact me, this is vegans and non-vegans, they don't understand the animal or the species they're dealing with. Now, what makes me really good at what I do is that I understand the psychology and the behavior of all the species that I work with. And that's everything from a mole to a deer to a rat to a mouse to an ant to a spider to a wasp, you name it. I spend time to understand how these creatures think and behave. Now, so to me, wildlife conflicts, I understand it straight away. People give me a scenario, I know already, which way it's going to go and how we're going to solve it. But for people who don't necessarily understand a wasp or understand a mole or really understand rats and mice, take away the stereotypes, take away all the scaremongering the stories we hear. Once you start to understand these animals, it changes people's perspectives. And like, for example, we get a lot of foxes here in the UK. And I'll get people contacting me going, I've got foxes in the garden, I've got children, I'm terrified they're going to eat my children or bite my children. And by the time I've took the time to speak to them about them, educate them about how wonderful of opportunity this is, and I'll say to them, like, you got foxes living underneath your summer house in your garden. You don't need to be scared. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to hurt your children. They're not going to hurt your pets. But what this does present them with, and I always say this, especially if they've got children in the families like this, presents you with an opportunity where you can show your children wildlife raising a family right in front of you. People sometimes will pay money to go to zoos and things like that to see wild animals, which are not really wild because they're in captivity. But if, like with foxes in your garden, I say to them, get your children encouraged, get them to draw pictures or tell stories to their friends at school, and just watch. This family is giving you this perfect opportunity. You can watch them raise their babies safely in your garden, something that people would pay to do, and you're getting it for free. Yes, they might dig a bit. Yes, they might cause a bit of mayhem, but there's a life lesson there that family would get that just other people just wouldn't understand. And then if you take rats, for example, and people have rats in their house or even their garden, and they get terrified of disease. And once you understand the actual risk, it's so minimal. I did a bit of research here about 7 years ago, and I used our National Health Service records, which you can publicly use in the UK. And the same year that one person was administered into hospital due to suspected Wales disease from a rat, the same year 6 people died through vending machines falling on top of them. So when I do my talks, I always say, from using those stats that I found on NHS records through open source, you're more likely to be killed by a vending machine falling on top of you than to even be hospitalized, not even to be seriously harmed, but to be hospitalized as a precaution from a rat. And then you look at another aspect, which I do when people have rat problems. You think how many millions of people around the world have had rats as pets. And then you ask those people who have had rats as pets how intelligent, how caring, how sensitive rats are. And those people who kept them will see those sized rats. Now, these domestic rats display all the same emotional feelings that wild rats do, but in the wild scenario, you just don't get the chance to get to know them and get to see that. So that's 2 examples, I guess, Jennifer, there of how how I educate people about rats or foxes, but I do it for every species because it's all about people not knowing. And when people don't know how to deal with a creature, what risks there are, or they feel like they don't have any control over a fox being in a garden or a mouse being in a kitchen, when people feel like they're losing control, they panic and they feel fearful. So my job in these situations is to put it all out there straight and simple and say, look, there's basically no risk in this situation here. You have nothing to worry about. This is a little bit of information about how this animal thinks and behaves. And here's a nice little fact about them, which will make you think about them in a different light. And that can sometimes, and a lot of the times, I say with foxes, that will change people's perspective on the animal. And it stops me from going out and having to charge people for the service. But if I don't need to charge someone, I don't need to go out and pay, someone has to pay me to go and remove an animal or to move it on without harming it, then I've achieved everything I needed to, because now this person's going to have a respect for those animals.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that education and understanding is so very important. Um, for sure. And what are some situations where you would need to come and remove animals? Because sometimes there can be a lot of rats or a lot of mice, and that can be naturally concerning for people. So, what are some situations that you would come in and move a fox or a rat or mice?
So, okay, so a really good example here. I look after a lot of restaurants all over the UK, from London to Edinburgh to Glasgow to Bristol, Birmingham, you name it. I look after these places. Now, I had a restaurant client who had mice in their premises. And obviously, you don't want to have mice in a restaurant setting because there's lots of food there. So, in this case, we proofed the property and we knew there was a small family of young mice that needed removing. So, what we do, we get live catch traps and we set them up to catch these animals live, and we give them the food that they're going after. So, if we know that, let's say, they've been going into a bag of flour or a bag of rice, we will bait the trap with the food that they want, because using the psychology of behavior, those animals, you have to give them what they're going for. So in these situations, we have a live catch trap sitting there, and then we have a live camera on the trap. So I can watch the behavior of the animal. And as soon as it's caught in the trap, I'm triggered by my phone that there is the animal there, and I can simply go there and then release the animal. And so for this restaurant we were working with, they had 4 little mice, and we managed to catch all the mice, and then we left the cameras there, and it showed there was nothing left in the business, and I got the all clear. So by doing that, we showed you don't need to kill these animals. The business has been mouse free now for 2 months, and there's no way mice can get back in. And a really cute little side story to this: the mice we did catch were slightly too small to be released in the wild. So we have someone who does small rodent rescue
Oh,
here in Glasgow, and we call her our mousy mama. So we took her all 4 of the baby mice, and she reared them over Christmas. They even got a special mousy Christmas dinner. And
oh.
then once they were big enough and healthy enough, I then took them from the mousy mama and released them back into the wild with everything they needed to survive. So not every situation requires me to remove animals from the environment. A lot of the times I prefer to allow them to do that themselves. So if you take away their food source or the attraction that's bringing them to an area, what
Mhm.
you'll find is that they'll relocate themselves, and that's 100% the best way to do it. Because for a rat, for example, or a mouse, they will take their family with them and their babies with them, so no one gets left behind, and you don't need to worry about the welfare of any young animals. By allowing them to do it themselves, they'll find a safe place, they'll find somewhere with a good food source, and they'll be able to do that all without me having to lift a finger. And that is the best way, because mummy and daddy rat knows what's best for their family, and it's always best to allow them to make those decisions themselves.
That's a great tip. If obviously it's harder with a restaurant, but at home, if there's ways that you can take your food items or any other items that are attracting a particular animal and remove it, then they're going to get bored. They're going to realize this place isn't for me anymore, and
Yeah, exactly.
they'll go
Yeah.
on their way. I found a mouse trap, a live humane trap, a couple last year, because we had I was living in Brooklyn for 16 years and then moved recently, um, an hour and a half away from New York City, and um the mice are very smart. I have a cat, and we hadn't had a mouse issue the whole time we were there, and then one night we saw a mouse on the counter, and it found a place to hide behind the stove, but it was not going anywhere on the ground because I think it knew we had a cat, and so she was around hearing it, but they would stay on the counter. And once we found it, I ordered on Amazon a live mouse trap, and I did a lot of research because I was reading how some of them weren't long enough and they would like cut their tails. So like I found one that had enough space to prevent that from happening, and it worked. Like I put it up, I set peanuts in there, and within a couple hours of my husband and I were watching TV, we heard the trap shot, and sure enough, we caught this cute. It was so cute. I mean, I again the empathy. It was just very scared. It was just a scared
Yeah.
little creature, and I was like, how can anyone kill this with a mouse trap or a glue trap?
And you know
Yeah.
what? That is such, for all your listeners and viewers, that is such a brilliant example of how easy and simple it is not to choose and harm an animal, instead taking a non-lethal route and having a great success and result at the end of it. It really is sometimes that simple to do. So, I mean, hats off to you, Jennifer. That has just shown so much kindness and compassion and empathy, and I love that. And it it's so easy to do. You know, you've just displayed just how effective and easy that is to do something so simple where nothing's had to be harmed. So well
Yeah.
done. That was
Thank
brilliant.
you. Yay, thank you. Yeah, I did it twice, and we took it away and released it in a field not too far away, and that was it. We had two of them, and they never came back. So it worked.
Excellent.
I think, you know what, I'm going to look for the link, and I'm going to put it in the notes below. So anyone watching, if you want to know what live mouse trap I used, I'll put the link to that below. So if anyone wants to try it out, it worked well for us. Yeah, so what about insects? What about understanding insects and managing them?
Okay, I'll give really two good examples here. So one will be wasps. So I worked for wasps for a long time to try and find a way to use natural products. So we're talking plant-based compounds to try and deter them. Um, and we're making some good progress with our research. And we got offered a really substantial bit of money to do a research program with this big research organization. However, they wanted to do animal testing, so we turned them down again because we were never ever going to sell our values out for something that we're so against. So that left me with having to find new ways to deal with them. And I've got to the point now with a wasp nest, as long as I can reach it, I can reset a wasp nest without any protective equipment. I can pick up the nest with all the wasps in it, put it in a container, take it away, reset it back in the wild, and they'll continue doing that. And I wouldn't recommend people doing it unless you know what you're doing. This is over a decade's worth of experience and trial and error and many stings, which I'm luckily not allergic to, because I'd have a big problem if I was. But yeah, I found a way just by learning how these animals behave and interact with the world around them, not just human predators, but like badgers and foxes, which would also target wasp nests. And by just understanding how they think and see and react to the world, I was able to find a way that I can literally just pick up a wasp nest with wasps in it and reset it somewhere they can continue away from people. And then if we look at ants, for example, ants coming into homes and businesses, it's a really easy one to do. It takes a little bit of detective work, but this is something anyone can do. Is simply, you want to watch where they go to and from, because an ant is initially attracted into your home because it's found a food source. Now, what will happen is, let's say the food source is here and the ants come in from, we'll say, this side of the screen, just because people are watching, and this ant follows a little trail and it finds its food source and it takes it back to the nest. And then it repeats this journey again and again and again. Now, while the ant's doing this, it's laying down a chemical trail from its nest site to that food source. Now, the more times that ant goes backwards and forwards, the stronger that chemical trail gets. The stronger that chemical trail gets, you now get 2 ants going back and forward, and then 3, and then 5, until you get your line of ants going back and forth to this food source. So the first thing to do is just see where they're going, because if you can follow them back and you know where they're going, their hole is, you have to wait until nighttime till all the ants are back in the nest. You can then simply seal up that gap. And then the next thing you do is, it's a bit of chemical warfare with ants, but it's not affecting them directly. What you would do in the evening, once all those ants gone back in that hole, you seal up that hole, and then you use either a pure lemon or pure white wine vinegar wash, and you spray it on top of the roots that the ants have been taking.
Oh,
Now, this is my chemical warfare is that these the high acidity of the vinegar and the lemon will break down those trails. So even if an ant managed to find a way back in again, he can't find his trail back to the food, which hopefully you've then cleaned away. And then if the ant goes around and can't find anything, he'll go back out and that's the end of it because they've got no desire or need then to come back in. And it really is that simple with ants, to encourage them to go look elsewhere. Because if this is the center of their nest, what ants will typically do is one day they'll go this way, next day they'll go that way, next day they'll go this way, and they forage in lots of different directions. And as soon as they pick up on a good ready-made food source, they'll all then direct their attention to that food source. So it's just understanding them again, just like we spoke previously, Jennifer, in the last question about understanding the animal you're working with. Ants, they don't pose any risk to people, no disease risk at all. It's just an inconvenience when people don't want to see little insects running around their kitchens. But you know what? They're one of the most amazing, socially complex species on the planet, more socially complex than humans. And yeah, I wouldn't be in a hurry if ants came into my home. I'd actually quite enjoy observing them for a few days, and I know my partner would be the same, and should probably enjoy it. But when it comes to asking them to leave, I know exactly how to do it without causing them any harm.
You know, that's great. First of all, the lemon and the vinegar, that's not using chemicals, which then you have to worry about what if your pet gets into or how's it going to impact other
Yeah,
things in the household. So I'm a big fan of doing things in a non-chemical way because those chemicals are very strong and can cause more harm than probably the insects can cause when people use them. And that's a really great story of understanding. And ants are incredibly smart. I saw a documentary about them, and they have their own little society, their own hierarchy, their own way of doing
they do.
things.
Yeah, they're amazing creatures, Jennifer. Well, I absolutely love them.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I just want you. So your work has had a big impact in Scotland. You've said that you've changed some policies.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, if we look at the impact overall, so in those 10 years, we've done over 6,500 jobs. If you equate that to all the different species we've helped tens, if not hundreds of thousands of wildlife, everything from the ants to your wasps to foxes and that. So, on a larger scale of things, we've really helped so many animals, and it's we're really lucky in that sense that we've helped so many. But yeah, we got consulted by the Scottish Government on a potential glue trap ban, and we were asked to give our expert opinion. And that expert opinion has actually directly helped that process, and it's passed through the Scottish Government. And we're hoping, I think this year, it's going to take effect, and it'll be a complete ban on glue traps. So,
Wow.
I never could ever dream or imagine that I would be helping policies and laws change in Scotland. I never envisaged a business would have that, but because we're so well respected and we've been going for over a decade, people from government level come and ask us for our opinion. Now, we also are very strongly against fox hunting here in Scotland, and I've spent many years tackling fox hunting in the countryside in England and Scotland. And we were also asked again for our opinions on fox hunting, and I have a view into it that not many people do because I've spent many years tackling these people, so I know how they work inside and out. And we were delighted to be asked to work on the licensing for that. So actually, the physical licensing that goes to effectively stop illegal fox hunting in Scotland. So we played a huge part in that. And then we also changed the law regarding gulls. So red-listed gulls here in Scotland were being killed in their tens of thousands, which is madness in the first place because they're a protected species. So it should never, ever have been happening. And I found out about it. I offered the government, the Scottish Government, that I could run a trial and show them that you don't need to kill them. And we done this trial and we saved hundreds of baby birds from
Wow.
rearing them from eggs to young chicks to going back out in the wild. And some of the birds that we raised, we have had reports of the birds because they had special ring tags on them through bird ring and by the BTO here in the UK. that some of the chicks that we raised from an egg that I held in my hands as they hatched have gone all the way from Scotland down right through southern Europe, right through to North Africa, and gone right down to Morocco and Mauritania, and spent their summers, their winters there before coming back again. So our work is shown that it has a huge impact, and it saves so many lives.
That's incredible. You're doing such amazing work, and I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you coming here today to share about this. I feel like there's so much to learn from you, and I'll definitely have you share your contact information in a moment so people can reach out to you for any questions that they have. But before we do that, what are some helpful resources that you could recommend that could help people with wildlife and any pests?
Um, I guess if you have wildlife issues, it's always good to speak to your local wildlife rescue. Now, I know you've got loads in America. We have loads here in the UK, so it's always good to speak to them for additional resources. I'm not too sure about other resources for the United States, but here in the UK, we would often say speaking to people like Animal Aid, Viva, which are big animal welfare organisations, other ones like One Kind, because these people have a big vested interest in looking after animals and they campaign for animals. But I guess the best resource when it comes to wildlife conflicts is probably going to be myself. And I'm more than I'm more than happy for people to contact me just to talk about wildlife, because that's my whole life is evolves around wildlife. So if you're unsure and you want some advice, you can drop me an email, go on our Facebook page, just whatever suits you. But feel free to get in touch, because my whole day is spent talking to people about wildlife conflicts, and I love that. So if I can help educate people about that, I'm probably one of the best resources when it comes to wildlife conflicts that you're going to find, certainly in Europe. I'm not sure about the further world, but I'm always open to talk to people about it, because it's my big passion. Animals are my passion, and if someone wants to speak to me about a certain species or a certain conflict, then I'm just more than happy to do that. And we do global consultations. So I've helped people in Canada, I've helped people in the United States, everywhere from China, Vietnam, Africa, you name it. I
Wow.
won't turn people away if they need it. So no matter where in the world you're watching this, if you have a wildlife conflict, you can get in touch. And we've done multiple consultations for people in the United States, helping them with rat and mice issues, and you name it. We've been there and we've done it. So yeah, I don't want to blow my trumpet too much, but if it's a resource for wildlife conflict, I'm your guy. Just get in touch. And I'm open on all my social media channels or emails to get in touch and chat, and I'll happily help you talk through your wildlife question, if it even is just a question rather than assistance.
Great. Thank you so much. So what I'll do is I'll leave all of your contact information in the notes below this video. So if you want to connect with Kevin and ask him a question, I think that's a great place to start. I never met anyone with so much information that you have, and such a great passion and care for the animals. I think you're doing such beautiful work, and by doing that work and educating people, and it just helps us understand and be more intentional. I think, and I've had this discussion before with other vegans, when we become vegan, we become intentional in a lot of different areas in our life. You start thinking more about just everything and how things get impacted. And so I think it's so important to understand animals and wildlife, because they were here first, and then we
Exactly. Yeah, they certainly were. They certainly were.
yeah, great. And you also have a website as well, correct?
Yep, it's www.humaneWildlifeSolutions.co.uk, or you can put the same into, well, just see behind me here. You can
Okay.
put that into Facebook or Instagram, and you can find us on those channels. And you can follow the work we do. Like I say, we don't just help people with wildlife conflicts in their homes and businesses. We do a lot of campaigns, a lot of research, trying to make the world a better place for wildlife to live alongside us. Because, like you say, at the end of the day, we're all earthlings, no matter whether that earthling is an ant, a pigeon, a wasp, a rat. we all share this planet. It's no more our planet than is a pigeon which is sitting on my windowsill right now. Um, so we need to always be respectful of that we share this planet with them. We may build huge houses on the land where these animals live, but that still shouldn't stop us sharing that land that we may own or that we may rent with these animals because it's their home too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on here today. I'm so glad we connected, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and sharing your message and sharing the work that you're doing. It's really, really important. I'm going to leave all of Kevin's links in the notes below. I'll also leave the link for the mouse trap that I bought last year that worked great. And thank you all for joining, and I'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye for
Thank
now.
you. Bye.